to start by saying Mr. Jealous was born in 1973 in Pacific Grove, California. He was elected the youngest black president of the NAACP at the age of 35. Is credited with reviving the organization by Forbes magazine. In 2014, Mr. Jealous became a senior partner with Capital, a firm that leverages the tech sector to create progressive and social change. He also joined the Center for American Progress as a senior fellow. He has accomplished so much at a young age. He's married, he has two kids, a son and a daughter, amen. He's only 44 years old. And I'm wondering in my mind, how can a young man so young accomplish so much? Ladies and gentlemen, I give to you Mr. Benjamin Jealous. Bless you, sir.
I'm running for governor because Maryland has been good to my family for generations. And I want to make sure that it remains good for working families for generations and coming. In fact, I want to make sure it gets better. My family has lived the American dream because we invested in the Maryland dream. I believe that we can have a state where our schools are strong and getting stronger, where work adds up for every worker, where our economy is growing so robustly it lifts thousands of families out of poverty, where we protect our environment and where we are much safer than we are right now. I believe all those things are possible. And by the way, where we have public universities that do not drive our young people to death. I believe all of those things are true, are possible. As Democrats, we look at our education system, which has become basically a profit mill for debt, for debtors, for loan sharks, essentially. Even the federal government charges our young people like 7 to 8% on their loans. Right? My mortgage is half that. We look at our healthcare system. It's like the craziest game of musical chairs you've ever played. And it's expensive. I've met with small business people in Talbot County whose businesses are being strangled by healthcare costs that keep surging up. And as a party, we have a choice in how we respond to these things. We can do it incrementally, and things don't change. We can say, you know what, we're going to tie any increases now on the cost of the University of Maryland School of Law to inflation. Well, it's 12 times what it used to be. Folks say, oh, on healthcare, we should do a public option. You know what? It doesn't change the underlying economics. And so then you have to ask yourself, well, what do you do? Now, I'm a movement guy and I'm a business person. A business person who knows we have an economic imperative to deal with the indebting of our students, to deal with this healthcare system that's out of control. You look at American productivity the last 30 years, it goes down like this. They call it the Great American Slowdown. Young people are not starting businesses at the same rate that they used to. Well, why would I have started about 1986? You got a couple things going on. Big things involve young people, and the total institutions are crammed full of people 18 to 35. One, the cost of our universities, it started to skyrocket. Two, so had mass incarceration. Because when you're talking about small businesses, you're not just talking about startups like I invested in Cape Ward Capital, you're also about detail shops. Flower shops, is what my cousin just said. And so we, this party of FDR, of JFK, of MLK, of Shirley Chisholm, of Barbara Mikulski, we have a choice. We can either tack a little bit to the right, be kind of polite, go along to get along, not challenge too much, and allow the American dream to continue to rust. Or we can do what we were set up to do, the things that inspired us to become Democrats and civil rights activists in the first place, which is to actually solve the whole problem. When I'm governor on the issue of public higher education, we'll start with what Baltimore City has already done. We will make all of our community colleges free. Why would you do that? Well, first of all, you have a lot of folks who qualify for them to be free right now but don't realize that. Because it takes like 3 conversations to figure out you can qualify for a Pell Grant. Oh yeah, this is free. So let's just signal to all those folks, as the folks who qualify for Pell Grants are the ones who need to know more than anybody else that they can afford to go to college. So we'll do that. And when you do that, you get to do some fun things. You can push your community college education back into high school, more and more of it. On the liberal arts side, as Bard Community College is doing in Baltimore, and Bard Charter School is doing in Baltimore, kids graduate from there, high school diploma and an associate's degree at the same time. And Prince George's Community College is doing with trades as well. Because if we can put 2 years of college into high school, we can certainly put 2 years of a 4-year trade apprenticeship into high school. And if we do that, we will hold on to a lot more girls and a whole lot more boys. We have, for over a generation now, told young people in high school the only reason to be here is to get to college. And you know what? A lot of them have figured out the only reason to be here is to get to college, and they ain't going there, so they don't stay. You can also take those, your offerings at the community college and move towards what they call micro degrees or stackable degrees. These are things like learning one language as a programmer so you can get that next job. And running them every 6 weeks, we do right now, like with certifying somebody to be a trucker. And over time, those things can add up. Like my 19-year-old nephew is going to get a baking certification, and that can add up to an associate's degree in hospitality. But he also may just want the baking certification. Step 2 is we do what New York State has done, what Cuomo has done, which is to say that if a family is solidly in the middle class, the children will not go into debt attending our universities. So for there, they've raised it, I think, families with incomes of $125,000, well over the eligibility for the Pell Grant. So you start to eliminate debt, but the third step will take more time. You know, the leaders in our state would like you to believe that we have done criminal justice reform. I've worked with the governors of Georgia, of California, activists in Texas, and both parties. We have not. They're projecting 10 years from now our prison system will shrink by 5%. Georgia and New York are already down at least 25%. When was Maryland supposed to lag behind Georgia in anything? We did that under a Tea Party governor. We got together, the left and the right, and the one thing that the activists in both parties can agree on, which is that tough on crime became stupid on crime. Stupid on crime did not make us safer, just cost us a lot of money, destroyed a whole bunch of families. We can do this a whole lot better if we focus on what works. Kamala Harris calls that smart on crime. Newt Gingrich calls it right on crime. Whatever you call it, it's the right thing to do. It costs less money, it destroys less lives, it focuses on getting more violent people into prison and sending more nonviolent acts into rehab. And as you do that, as you bring down the expense of mass incarceration, we need to send the money back over to public higher education, with the goal of, if it's 2 generations, it's become astronomically expensive, maybe in 1 generation we can get things back. On our healthcare system, I was down in Talbot County, sitting in the backyard. Guy who voted for Donald Trump, voted for Obama twice, he voted for Donald Trump, said he would support me because he found out I was for Medicare for all and would make sure we pushed for it at the state level because, well, we're already halfway there. We're further along than any other state, and we can do it if we want. We know that there's a lot of savings to be earned because the overhead for private health insurance, like mine, Blue Cross Blue Shield, is at 17%, and for Medicaid, Medicare, it's 3%. We know that Americans are 5% of the world's people, but we're 60% of Big Pharma's profits. And the only way that we can get better leverage on Big Pharma is for the state to become the insurer for the entire state. The more we run. And you get more and more by making that plan accessible to other states as you get bigger and bigger populations under the same umbrella. Ending segregation was never enough. Thurgood Marshall understood, until we can fully fund all of our schools, there will not be sustainable transformative change in the education of American children. And let's be really clear, the so-called racial achievement gap sits inside of a much larger class-based achievement gap. And the way that you address both is you make sure there's a high-quality teacher in every classroom. That's the biggest, most transformative thing you can do. To get those teachers in the classroom, you've got to have great principals. When you have a great principal, great teachers flock to the school. When you have a bad one, they flee. You add to that the additional resources and, quite frankly, the better financial management that good principle brings and tying things to outcomes. And I believe we can finish with that great Maryland III and Marshall started. We can also seize the moment on clean and renewable energy. Become really serious about deploying turbines for offshore wind energy production. And if we're doing that, there's a real opportunity to build the turbines here and become the regional center as other states move towards us. We also have the opportunity to, frankly, much better market our state, its agriculture, and its tourism. The last thing I'll say is this: please don't let anybody come here, step to this podium, speak to your club, and act like the way to beat a lightweight Republican, which he really is with Republican light. It is a losing proposition to pretend that this is about persuasion. This is about turnout. We have to organize more seriously, and we have to inspire more fearlessly. We have to be clear that we are Democrats. We are the party that is on fire about advancing the civil rights of everybody, saving the environment, expanding economic opportunity for everyone, and ending poverty. Economists once said the greatest form of historic preservation was poverty. Don't sign me up for that. No. No, we have to embrace the strengths of who we are. I spent my life as a child on a bridge between Northern California, small town and rural areas, and West Baltimore. And I know the wonder of all those types of places. You look at the economy here, and it's sort of like an onion. The obvious thing is we need to do more to promote tourism, especially environmental tourism, that's really invested in the beauty, and agricultural tourism that's invested in the beauty and sort of what is, the way things look. We have to make sure that our farmers and our watermen really have the best advantages for producing in the most sustainable and profitable way. And we can do a much better job as how we manage things, but also how, quite frankly, we empower them like through state-of-the-art agricultural hubs that provide them the intelligence they need on crops and on products, and also make it easier to add value once you've harvested the crop and preparing it certain ways. Sort of like a massive commercial kitchen, if you will, for individual entrepreneurs, but in this case, for packaging. Public higher education, we should make sure that all of our community colleges are really becoming hubs of connection between people with aspirations, young and old, and local industry in a much more dynamic way, the way that I talked about earlier. A lot of anxiety in rural areas right now about Obamacare. Replace it with Trump care, and you'll see hospitals fold. Medicare for all is just the opposite. You go to the next step, you cover everybody, and the health sector grows. Finally, we need to deal with the cost of housing and the transportation issues that people think just don't exist simply because it's a sparse area. But especially as you invest in promoting tourism, you do things that make your area more attractive to other folks. You've got to look at community land banking for agriculture, but also for kind of more urban town-like areas. Make sure that you preserve affordable housing, because ultimately the nature of a community is ultimately defined by its people. You start pricing out the long-term residents, replacing them with people who may only be here 2 months a year, houses sit vacant, and your wonderful community becomes a ghost town. So those are the types of things that I think are important. We play to the strengths. It's about tourism, it's about agriculture, it's about healthcare, it's about higher education, and it's about making sure that we deal with the underlying inequities and things like transportation and housing that makes our state an increasingly hard place to live wherever you are.